My name is Douglas Wong. I started martial art training around the age of 10 years old. I first started in judo at the YMCA in Gardena. That was the first art I was available to me at the time. I did not get involved in Kung Fu until years later on. So in between the start after judo, I got into the various Japanese art, Goju style, Shotokan style. There was the Okinawan Goju style and the Japanese style Goju style. And then I got into later on into the Korean arts, Tang Soo Do. That's before Taekwondo came around. That was part of the art that Chuck Norris brought out. So that was in the South Bay area. So I was introduced into that also. Then I got into Kachi Kempo, which I really enjoyed. That was like a mixture of everything. Some of the hardcore stuff that we had to do, a lot of stuff kicking into the trees and running around barefoot, and our instructor used to break glass on the ground so we could run over there and roll on it and everything else. So we got the old style done that way. But then later on in about 1959, my teacher Art Wong opened up the first Kung Fu studio in Los Angeles, and he the first time taught non-Chinese students. So he was the first one open to the Western people. I didn't get up there until about 1964. So by that time, 64, I was 10 years of training already. So I was getting up there, before I got into that particular art. And his style was known as the 5 animal and the 5 family style. So it was like 10 different styles that he taught there. And he was learned from China. He was a grandmaster. And from there, when he first opened up, there were so many people that came up there to learn from him. Some of the important people, like the founder of the Lima Lama system, Tino Tulasega. Later on was Danny Inosantos. He was part of instructor from Ed Parker's system that came over to learn. And also Bob Cook was his training partner, also studied under Art Wong. During that time period, Art Wong was teaching at Ed Parker's studio in West Los Angeles. And some of the forms or set they call finger set was from Art Wong that was taught in the Kempo system. And so he taught many, many different Chinese people there that learned, including myself and Albert Leong. Albert was there in the daytime. I was doing classes in the evening. So I met him years later, and then we got together when I first opened up my studio in 1973. I happened to meet Albert somewhere. I forget exactly where, but I asked him and said, "Hey, why don't you come on down? Since I know you live here in the Valley, I just opened up my first studio." So I asked him, "Why don't you come on by and maybe help me teach, run some of the classes and stuff like that." And at that time, I also had James Liu. James Liu happened to be my next door neighbor. I've known him since 1961. We go back almost like 57 years. So we used to train together all the time. So we just jump over the fence to each other's houses all the time. So we were very close doing that. So we studied various arts together, also some Kung Fu arts together under the same teacher. During that time period, then I asked James and Albert to be captain of my team. During that time period in 1973, we opened up in January 1973. We started our competition, tournament competition in May of 1973. We wanted to get the school more recognized, so that's why we jumped into the competition. But instead of doing just traditional forms, especially in the black belt division, I beefed up the form. I added a few special moves, special kicks, somersaults, and so forth for the black belt division. The lower division, I had the guys do more of the traditional form. So the first time we did it, we competed at Tadashi Yamashita's tournament. This very first tournament we went there. I had about 30 people competing, and we didn't win one single thing at all. because at that time they didn't know what we were doing. It was a completely different art. At that time, you see all the white uniforms and you see us in black uniform. It was a whole completely different thing altogether. And so they didn't understand our movement. The crowd loved what we did, because there was something different, you know. They're so used to seeing just the traditional Japanese or Okinawan forms or the Korean form. But the Chinese form was much more exciting to watch, and especially for James and Albert. Then our second tournament was sponsored by Tino Tulasega. And so he knew more of the Chinese art, because he also studied under Art Wong. And he also taught a lot of his instructors, or he talked to these instructors out there and showed them that they're going to be doing Kung Fu. They'll be different. You have to look at the movements of what they're doing, the focus, the footwork, everything else that they're doing is going to be different from the Japanese art. And so from that time on, we started winning tournaments left and right. From white belt up to black belt division, we just took trophies, first, second, third place all the time. So we did that until December of 1973. We won over 400-something trophies. And then the tournament promoters start asking us not to compete anymore, because a lot of guys were not joining the different division because they knew they couldn't win. So they were dropping out. They would rather go into fighting. So finally we said, okay, well, we'll just do we'll drop out of it. So they started paying us to do demonstration. So we started doing that for more of entertainment. And later on, we got discovered a little bit at Emil Farkas's tournament in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, I should say. And a lot of the Hollywood producers and directors were out there watching. And they watched James and Albert and a couple other guys doing their stuff, and they just loved it. So we got hooked up to more into the movie. But prior to that, I was into the original pilot film for Kung Fu that was started in 1971, December 1971. What's happening was I was working out in the garage with my students at that time, and my dad's insurance guy was there to renew his policy. When he came out, he saw us practicing in the garage. He said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We're doing Kung Fu." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I have a friend that needs some work, some help on this film. He's working on a thing called Kung Fu. Can I give him your phone number?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And so I got a call the next day. It was David Chow, the technical advisor. And so he called me up, and I went down to the Warner Brothers studios, met with him and the directors and so forth. And then they said, "We're going to use this other guy as a star." I said, "But I thought Bruce Lee was supposed to be the star," because we saw that in the Chinese newspaper. They're talking about that. So, and also, no, we have somebody else in mind. So I said, "Okay, well, let's see what it looks like. We want to know if he looks Eurasian." I said, "Eurasian." I said, "Okay, let's see what's happening." So here comes David Carradine with a skull cap on, and they did his eyes and pulled it up a little bit, and he's walking real slow in a whole white robe. And they said, "You think he looks Eurasian?" I said, "Yeah, he looks pretty much." And so I said, "This is who you're going to use as a star?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Does he know anything?" He said, "No, we want you to train him. Can you train him?" I said, "I can train anybody. That's no problem." So I said, "Okay, let's go for it," you know. And so during that time period, it was myself and Cam Yuen that were the real Kung Fu people. David Chow was a judo mat. He didn't know anything about Kung Fu, but he could sell you dirt on the ground, keep you laughing, and these people didn't know about it. And so he pulled me and Cam Yuen to the side and said, "You're going to be my assistant technical advisor, because I don't know anything about this." I said, "I know." But he's going to use judo uniform and belts as part of the uniform. I said, No. Chinese uniform completely different. We use sash. We do a whole different thing altogether. And during that time period, we went around barefooted. We were supposed to wear shoes, but we couldn't get the shoes ordered in time, so we went barefooted on the set. And here in December, in the winter time, cold period out there on the cold concrete, we were freezing. And at that time also, I had my hair all the way down to my shoulders. So they said, in order for us to do the filming, you have to shave your hair. We're not going to pay you guys any extra money or anything like that. So 6 of us volunteered. So I said I wasn't doing anything anyway. So I was training the guy anyway. So I said, I'll stay. So they cut our hair off, and then they pay us extra $300. That's like $10,000 nowadays. You know, talking about old time. That's back in the 70s. And so we got to do that, but they didn't want us to film. And if the skull cap break, then we got to retake, and it's a bunch of money and reshooting everything, so they said, no, we'd rather have your head shaved off. So after that, in the series, they found out the skull cap worked, so they started wearing a skull cap. They didn't have to have their hair shaved, but I had to have mine all cut off. So during that time period, we met a lot of the old actors from the 40s and the 50s, Key Luke, and guys play Master Po and Master Tay and all these other guys. And we were all, I got to talk with them. They were guys I idolized from back in the days when I used to watch them on TV and stuff and movies in old time. And so we got to work with a lot of these old guys. And Phil Wong was one of the guys also. He played the master take the pebble out of my hand. And he had a restaurant about 5 blocks away from my school, so I used to go visit him all the time in Panorama City. And so he used to play that trick with the kids. They have a stone in there and have the kids come up there. And he would always joke with them doing that. But he was a good guy, great guy to know.
Quickly as you can, snatch the pebble from my hand. When you take the pebble from my hand, it will be time for you to leave.
And Master Po, Key Luke, he had the white contacts on, so he was a very important character. But he was doing 2 movies at the time. He was working on that set and another set, so they used to come fly him or drive him to another set. And so he's working 2 sets at one time. But he was another character. He was a great guy altogether. Then later on, when we finished the film, we opened up our first studio in '73. So we advertised as stuntmen from the Kung Fu series. Because by that time, they started the first series, and my brother and James Liu were stunt guys in series 1, season 1. And so we advertised that as part of it. And we had uniforms that we made for our studio. So we just built, instead of using karate gis and stuff, we had the Kung Fu ones that were made real nice. My mom was a seamstress, so she was sewing them up for us. And we were going to advertise selling them to the mass, to the public. And we tried to go take out an ad in Black Belt magazine, and we found out the cost. And my brother said, "No, I don't think we're going to do that. I think we're going to start our own magazine." And that's the idea that we started, was Inside Kung Fu magazine, with release date of December 1973. And so from that time on, we ran that magazine from 1973 to 2010, 37 years. And it was one of the top martial art magazines out there. We cover a lot on the Chinese art, but we also have what's called Inside Karate magazine, Inside Taekwondo. We covered the various arts, so the Filipino art, Chinese art, Asian, everything. We just covered all that. We also had one on paintball. We had one on roller blades, and there's so many different magazines my brother did. He just try to cover all the different ideas, sports, and so forth. And so that was one of the things we did back in the day. So I wrote for the magazine for many years, wrote probably over 500 articles, and I set up all the interviews of all the different Chinese masters that I knew at that time, and helping them get on the cover or inside articles. So, I still hear from people a couple hundred letters from all over around the world about Inside Kung Fu magazine and the thanks that I helped put them in there. Saw Ernie Reyes Jr. and Sr. About a year ago, and they keep always thanking me for putting them in the magazine, getting them their props on that. So there's so many people. So I met so many people through the magazine, so many different masters from different systems. It was a great time doing that. Now, during that time period, we were ambassadors per se. So we went to many different arts, so that opened me up to do a lot of stuff. But also we got more into the movie industry also. So during that time period, 1974, we started what's called Instant Action Coordinator, and that was with Kim Kahana, one of the top stunt people at that time, and with myself, Tadashi Yamashita, Jake Flores, and David Chow. So we were involved into a lot of different TV shows and movie stuff. So we provided different coordinating of fight choreographing, my weapons. I mean, my weapons were rented out for so many different movies. They probably did more movies than I was in working in. So there was a lot of different things like that. And I got to work on a lot of stuff. And then I got James and Albert involved with a lot of stuff also. They got involved into it. They got discovered. Al got into this familiar Fu Manchu, long hair. He got to play a lot of the bad role. James did some of that. And then later he got to be the good guys. And then you see him in different movies, Big Trouble in Little China, where they're team against each other. One of the James, the good guy, and Albert, the bad guys. And so a lot of the fight stuff they did was stuff that I choreographed them back before when we was doing different demonstration shows and stuff. So they used a lot of those techniques from there. But they also added more stuff. They start changing. And so that's when, back in those days, they had TV shows. They had one for the Asian, one for the black, one for Latinos, and a lot of white ones. So we were always in all the Asian ones. So that was back in the days. Now it's all mixed. But back in the beginning, in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't like that. You know, they said they had to require to have one show to cover. So they would, their so-called law, you know, unspoken law. I remember Al, we used to go traveling everywhere to different tournaments, or we went to different demonstrations in San Francisco. He got thrown out of a couple of those things because he wasn't supposed to be filming. Some of those Chinese guys are really, they're very upset if you take any type of film. You're not allowed to. We did many shows, you know, with the guys from Hong Kong and China, and they would not let us film anything, but they would let those guys from Hong Kong film. And so there's a lot of film out there that when we did the demonstrations with them that we weren't allowed to do. So we're just kind of crazy, you know, since our guys were out doing some of those Hong Kong masters. And we got told not to do this set, not to do this set, not to do this set. Because I used to have one student, Jimmy Brown, was one of my protege. And he went out there with a double chain, and man, he put some of these Hong Kong teachers away, and they start yelling at me. I used to get in a lot of trouble. So I was teaching non-Chinese guys too a lot of the advanced techniques. So that was kind of bad in a way. But you know, that was part of my group. So that's start formulating my White Lotus system, because I went into Art Wong system, but also learned from 4 other Chinese teachers. And part of that was not just the forms, but also the healing aspect. So right now, I'm more into the healing aspect. So when I'm doing my seminars now, the last 5 years, I've been going down to San Diego and all down into Mexico, is doing my healing seminars. And I go down there and I realign people's body, tendon setting, bone setting, different things. I work with different ailments. They come from everything from legs to the top of the head, something wrong, and I have to readjust or re-break something and realign everything. So it's just part of the healing aspect. My teacher said the person that we hurt, we must be able to heal. So it's not that you can hurt and break his leg and break his arm, whatever. You got to be able to put it back again. So that was part of our studies that we had to do. So he used to have clinics all the time. Every week we would work on different areas of the person. My teacher's very good at him. His chi was so strong that he could do healing on cancer. You know, our chi never got that strong, but he learned from the monastery when he was very young. So you have to look at how and when and how to develop the energy from there. So there's a lot of times what the Chinese say, once you have sex, your energy is not the same. You have to learn all these precise energy exercises before you have any of that stuff. So a lot of us are already past that time. We're in the 20s and 30s, you know, it's long gone. So a lot of those guys, they learn while before they're 10 or 12 years old. They have these exercises they have to learn to do and develop, and a certain diet they have to go through. So it's all part of the Chinese art. My wife was a student that studied in Idaho. She happened to see a magazine, Inside Kung Fu magazine, with me on the cover, and she decided to come down to California and check it out. So she came down to Ed Parker's tournament, and visit different schools and stuff, and checked out my school, Sifu Lu School, Danny and Santos, and so forth. And so she ended up, and I was showing her and her friends that came down what Kung Fu was all about. And I was showing some of the internal, some of the healing, some of the weaponry, and everything else. And so she moved down, a couple months later, she moved down 900 miles down to Los Angeles to take lessons from me. And then thereafter, we got involved, we got married. And we had our 3 kids and got them involved also. We wanted to train our kids from young. So with our oldest, Travis, he was 6 months old before we started training him. And then my oldest daughter, we started training her at 3 months old, and my youngest daughter, we started training her at 2 months old. The exercise that we made, so like they do like in Mommy and Me classes, but Chinese styles are where we're moving the arm up and down, we're stretching legs across the ears, bringing it over, stretching behind the neck. So we were doing different things. We had them stand up, we had 2 dowels, small sticks, and we had them pull up and they start walking. So they were doing all this without the walker. So they start walking all at 9 months old. So and we had them hold the stick, and we circled the stick. So now they were getting all these movements of the arm and in and out. So they had the motion of punching and kicking and stuff, so forth. 6 months old, 7 months old, my son, I told him kick, and he was just throwing kicks up in the air, even though he couldn't stand yet. But he pulled up on the sofa or couch and just shot those legs up like anything. So I have pictures of my son. He had a bottle in one hand and spinning the staff in the other hand. So we taught them young, and for them, it made them focus. They had confidence in everything that they did. They weren't afraid. And one thing we always told our students, never baby talk to them. Talk to them like an adult. So they were holding conversation at 2 years old, easy with adults. They didn't have any baby talks at all. My wife was working at home, so she taught them how to read, write, tie shoes, did all this kind of stuff. So we were a family that trained together. So after 1 month, where they always tell you not to take them out to the public, after that, they were at the studio all the time. And so they're watching mom work out, me work out, just other students work out, and they were just involved into it. Travis has now become one of the top guys in working stunts, working motion capture, choreographing. He does so many different things. He did the Circus Soleil show that just came out, and that's going to go on for the next 10 years. So he choreographed that. He did the Jungle Book 1, and we just did I can't even think of all these shows now. I'm thinking about the Doctor Strange, and then there's a courtyard scene. They're using all the Qigong exercise and movement. Those are my stuff, all from the White Lotus system. And then we just did Pacific Rim 2. I trained female actors in there, and then Travis choreographed some of the fight scenes in there. We did Captain America. We did the Green Hornet thing. We did G.I. Joe 2, and that had my son was part of the Red Ninja fighting on the mountainside. My wife was in the white wig fighting, the old lady fighting there. And James was also part of the Chinese ambassador in the movie, so all 3 of those guys in there together. Back in the old days, we all got to work together. Talking about myself, Albert, Steve Lambert, and James Liu. So we all worked on the Miller Lite commercial. And Steve Lambert was second unit director, so he got us all into that with Jiro Okamura, Tadashi Yamashita, Bill Raisaki, and a couple other guys. So we all worked together.
I am master of ancient art of karate, kung fu, and Chinese chapel. But the one about the socializing, I always reach for a cold Miller Lite. Light tastes great. Lightless are filling too. Hey, anybody want the pepperoni?
ancient proverb, only one light beer, Miller Lite.
Then through the years, you see Gerald working with James and everything. They're doing their tutus and different commercials and stuff like that. And they're very good in working together on and doing different things like that. But there's so many people back in the days when we were coming up, that we got written in various magazines, Black Belt magazine, Inside Kung Fu, so forth, into Look magazine, Time magazine, Sports Illustrated. I have so many different articles that we did for various magazines, and I was an editor for Exercise for Men magazine for a while. Did that for about a year, and showing the different techniques to use for stretching, for body conditioning, and so forth. And they stuck it in there, so they got some of these muscular guys. I was just showing them what to do on the side, so it was kind of fun. And there was a lot of stuff that we did with all the different teachers also, going back to Ed Parker, Tino Tulasega, Bong Soo Han, C.O. Choi, so all these pioneers that came to Los Angeles back in the old days. And we got to train with them and a lot of their top black belts. So it was a melting pot here. That's what we got when we started. Myself in '68, we were going to LA City College with Carl and Tommy and Wilson. So we became training partners since that time period. We go to our classes, find an empty classroom. We go out and work out together, 5 or 6 hours. Then we go somewhere else and work out on the weekends and stuff. And it didn't matter what style it was. So when we worked out, there was people from every style you can think about. And I used to work out a lot with BKF people, all the Black Karate Federation. So Steve Sanders, or Steve Muhammad now as he called, we know those guys from way back, Wild Man and Rabbit and everybody else, all the nicknames they go by, and Ron Chappelle and so forth. So we know those guys from way back in the old days. And we mixed our arts, we shared our arts, and we always help each other do demonstrations and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun of doing that. And then also when we had our first studio in '73, we opened up. My brother learned from Art Wong, who was his student at first, and studied under him. And then later on I started studying with Daniel Lee. And so he was one of Bruce Lee's top students. So he used to bring those guys over to the studio. So we used to work out with all the JKD guys, and him and Mitch Kubota, I can't even think all these guys' names that passed away, but a lot of the old guys, and they were all first generation. I know Danny in something for so long, a long time. I know his daughter Diane and so forth. So we always see each other, and Ed Parker Jr. So we know the Parker family for a long time, so we see each other all the time. So a lot of those are the old martial art royalty, as they per se, and a lot of the pioneers. I have to say Art Wong, my teacher, he was only like 5'6", 120, 30 pounds. But boy, the technique that he does, he did what's called an iron palm. And his fingers were all even to the small finger, but he used all the pounding style. But he used the herbal medicine, and that's what kept it supple and kept it circulating. Because a lot of the karate side, when they beat, all these get big and disform, but they're not using the medicine. They're just doing raw beating. With the Chinese medicine, it keeps the circulation going. It keeps the chi flowing. So all the marining points don't get damaged. So I watched him. We were in class one night, and he tapped one of my classmates and knocked him down. And I laughed. He said, "Boy, you don't believe?" I said, "No, I don't believe. I'm one of the guys you got to show." So he said, "Come up." So he took his finger. I just saw he had to reach up toward me, and it came down to my third eye. Pop! It's just like taking a hammer hitting a block of wood. That's what it sounded like. And I hit that ground so fast. And it was just a little tap. It was no big thing. I just hit it, exploded, and he said, "Come up, boy, rub medicine before you die." So it was the dip monk, some of the death touch. And he knocked my butt down. After that, I said, "You believe now, boy?" "Oh, yes, sir." And I never doubted him again. I took him to Vegas one time. We were doing a demonstration at one Tropicana Hotel, I believe, and with all the different people, Mike Stone and everybody else there. And so he take off his glasses like Clark Kent Superman, and he goes into that kung fu mode. If you see him doing the dragon in the Kung Fu pilot film, man. He's serious as a heart attack. And then after that, he puts his glasses on, he's laughing and giggling, and it's a whole different personality altogether. But when he does his technique, you can feel the power. Everybody knows what his energy felt like. You know, it was different. But he was a powerful man. And one of my other teachers was Shirkei Liu, and his technique of healing. I mean, one time we went to a show, and one of my daughters was not feeling good at all. She was sick, and came to, Dad, I don't feel good. And I was sitting next to Sifu Liu. Oh, come here. And he just waved his hand about 3 times, and it was all gone. Everything was done with the healing. But he worked on different people with different type of cancer, and he could heal it. He was very good with the healing art. But also if he hits you, man, oh man, it's something he was. They all were into the iron palm. His is more what's called the internal iron palm. But there's some that you hit just on the bricks and the hard surface. But his does more in the sand and light stuff. And where my other teacher, Do Wei, also one of my healers, also he put a coconut between 2 pillows. When he slapped it, he cracked the coconut in half. So that was just showing the softer part of the internal system. But those are the guys that I really like doing the internal system. You know, physically, my teacher Tiny was probably the best that I like fighting wise. He taught me most of my fighting technique, or had me learn to understand what fighting technique, where I can watch different style, no matter how they did it. It was Korean, Japanese, Chinese, whatever style, what to look for, how to detect where the real techniques were. So a lot of the techniques, when you see them going, if you reverse it backwards, the real techniques are going backwards, not going forward. So he taught me a lot of different ideas where I got the concept to develop my White Lotus system. So I based my fighting system on what he taught me. For many of the people coming out, starting martial arts now, find yourself a good teacher. Also find out a style that you want to do. What are you good at? Do you like to do more hands or more feet or more grabbing somebody, grappling style? But right now you have to find something that you want to stick with to start building your foundation. So when we started out in Kung Fu, we had our horses we had to stay in, and a lot of this is the old style, where we had to sit there for a year doing that type of stuff. Nowadays, it's harder for the new generation to do that type of old style training. But what you got to do is find a teacher that's willing to teach you, that has a basic foundation, to teach you not only the fighting aspect, but also what's control of the mind, body, and spirit. You have to have all 3 united to understand what it's all about. But you want to become a whole person. You don't want to become just a fighter for fighting reason only. What's behind it? Also, you got to find somebody that's also might be able to teach you the healing aspect behind it all. But fighting, like I say, is one thing. If you hurt them, can you fix them? Are you able to do that? Can your teacher help you do that or fix the person if you hurt them? But this is what you got to look for. You got to look for a complete art now. A lot of schools are not teaching that. They're only teaching you something to go into Olympic fighting and so forth. But there's nothing behind after that. You got to think about, you want to become a whole person. Now, if you want in the movie industry also, martial art is good to a certain point, but it's very limited. Now you have to add what's called parkour free running. This is all the flipping, the jumping, turning of your body, learning the control of it, because this is what they're using. They're not using all the wires and ropes anymore. Everything now is that your natural body is able to do it. So again, look into these different aspects if you want to get into it. So become more of a whole person, not just set in one thing. If you do martial art, that's all they're going to ask you to do, martial art. If you have other skills added to it, then they're going to pick you for more. But also take acting classes also. Learn about that. You can't just go in there cold cock and try to figure it out. It doesn't happen that way. So look into it. The martial arts is going to help you. The parkour is going to help you. Free running. Classes, education is very important. Don't think you're just going to come out of there and become a stuntman just like that. It doesn't work that way. So get in there, find a good teacher, do your research, go on the internet, find out, talk to the students there, talk to other people.